International Fight Week is finally here, and for the first time, instead of taking place on the first weekend of July or second weekend of July, it's taking place the last weekend of June, June 29th. It's UFC 303, and we know how we got here. It was supposed to be the greatest return in UFC history, with Conor McGregor taking on Michael Chandler in his return fight. As we know, Conor has a broken toe, had to withdraw from this date. But who saved the day? The guy that always saves the day as of late for the UFC, and that's Alex Pereira, the reigning, defending, undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion, is taking on the guy he beat back in November of this past year, JIRI Prochazka, who in his own right is coming off of a big finish at UFC 300. But this card, there were some changes made in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and we ended up with a really good card. And I wanted to start with the first fight on this card that has stayed on this card since it was announced months ago. This is, to me, the second best fight on this card. We'll get into what the co-main event is. That one is a great fight as well. But as soon as Ian Machado Gary, the number 7 ranked UFC welterweight contender in the world, was announced that he's fighting Michael Venom Page, MVP, who came into the UFC back in April, made his debut. He beat the always tough Kevin Holland in his first UFC fight. He's ranked 14. He didn't finish that fight, but he beat him by decision. But this one has Ian Machado Gary as the favorite at -170 to +140, Michael Venom Page. And to me, this is just a striking dream matchup. Two of the best strikers in the welterweight division and in the sport right now. You can even go back to say that. They're both 6'3", even there, but MVP, as we know, is one of the longest, rangiest welterweights in the division. He has a 4.5-inch reach advantage over Ian Gary in this fight. And it's just crazy because when we think about Ian Gary, he's still only 26 years old. He only made his UFC debut 2.5 years ago, 30 months ago. And this will be his 8th fight since he made his debut back 2.5 years ago at MSG. And coincidentally, that was the same time that Alex Pereira made his UFC debut. He is fighting for the 9th time since that MSG card over 2 years ago, which is just crazy. Ian's been so active, and I have really just loved the path that he has taken his career. He hasn't taken too big of risks here. He's kind of, each fight, I feel like he's taking a harder opponent, and it's getting tougher and tougher each time as he's climbing up the rankings. And we saw that in his last fight when he beat Jeff Neal. It was a split decision, but I don't think it should have been. I think he beat him pretty handily. Before that, he dominated Neil Magny and knocked out D-Rod. So he's really making his way up. Those guys that he fought were good, but they're not at the level of MVP. I think MVP throws the most obstacles and presents the most problems to Ian Machado Gary since Gary debuted in the UFC. MVP, without a doubt, is his toughest opponent. He's, like I said, he's an elite striker. He's not just a prototypical striker. He's kind of has a weird type style. He's knocked people out with kicks and elbows and all different types of ways throughout his MMA career. He's 37. He needs this win just as much as Gary does if he wants to find his way into the top 5 possibly and get a title shot. But the winner of this puts themselves in that great position to get a title shot in the future. And I really think that Ian Machado Gary is going to get the job done. I think he's going to finish Michael Venom Page. Like I said, although Gary's been great, hasn't had a finish since Daniel Rodriguez a couple years ago. So he's hungry to get the job done against a very tough MVP. I could see this one playing out either way, just like the next few fights. But if I had to put my money, I'm putting it on Ian Gary, one of the best prospects in the UFC. He calls himself the future, and we'll see if he stays true to that come Saturday night. The next fight I'm looking forward to is Anthony Lionheart Smith. He's taking on the number 10 ranked middleweight. Smith's the 10th ranked light heavyweight. 10th ranked middleweight is Roman Dolidze, who's filling in just about a week's notice because Anthony Smith was filled in. He was supposed for Jamal Hill, and Smith was supposed to face Carlos Alberg, and then Alberg suffered an injury. In comes Dolidze to save the day. This fight, Smith was supposed to be in the co-main event. Now he's in the third fight from the top. Either way, this is a good fight. Dolidze is 35 as well as Smith. Smith has a 2-inch height advantage, and they have the same reach at 76. So they're even there. This is Roman Dolidze's first fight at light heavyweight, and this is as tough as it gets. When I saw the odds for this one, I was really surprised because Dolidze is a -140 to a +120 favorite to Anthony Smith is a +120 underdog. That is, I really just I don't understand that. Anthony Smith is the naturally bigger guy. He's a really big heavyweight. He has 2 inches on him. He walks around heavier. This is his normal weight class. And Anthony Smith, I just think people are sleeping on him too much. He's coming off of a dominant submission first round win just back in early May against Vitor Petrino. So he is really etching and getting higher in moving his way up in the light heavyweight division. And we know there's some tension between him and Alex Pereira. So he's potentially not that far off from a title shot. I think Anthony Smith beats Roman Dolidze. I think he finishes them in the second round. I think that should be a fun one. But getting to the co-main event and main event, the co-main event, it's Brian T. City Ortega, the former title challengers, coming off of a big submission win over Yair Rodriguez back in February. Diego Lopez had a big knockout at UFC 300, 3 finishes in a row, most recently against Sadiq Youssef in April. This guy is one of the best and fastest rising stars in the sport. He's only 29 years old. He's 3-1 in the UFC, 3-fight win streak, 4 years younger than Brian Ortega. But I think just like Anthony Smith, I don't know why Brian Ortega is the +130 underdog to -155 favorite for Lopez. This fight was scheduled to take place at featherweight, where they normally have their fights contested in the division that they're currently in. Ortega's ranked 4 in featherweight division. Lopez is ranked 13, but it was reported the morning of the weigh-in, early in the morning before the weigh-in, Ortega and the UFC they all came to some sort of agreement that this fight would be a lightweight fight, as Ortega was maybe struggling to make 145 because he was bulking up to get to 155 as he's expecting to make a move there in the future. But overall, this is a really, really good, exciting fight. My only thing is for this and the main event in particular, when you have 2 full matchups where guys weren't in full training camps, in the back of my mind, I do worry a tiny bit if the fights will live up, if the guys are fully in shape, if they're ready to go, because a week or 2 weeks ago, the 4 guys in the co-main and the main event weren't preparing, didn't even have a thought that they were going to be fighting this on this pay-per-view card at UFC 303. So that's my only worry, but these are 2 very exciting fights. I'm going to go with Brian Ortega. That's my prediction to win this fight. I think he submits Diego Lopez in the 3rd round. I think it's going to be an exciting fight, but Diego Lopez hasn't fought anybody even near the level of Brian T. City Ortega. That guy is just amazing. One of the best veterans of this sport and in the featherweight division for so many years. He's been ranked in that top 5 and he's been dominating people. So I think he's going to win this fight. But like I said, all of these fights, these 4 fights that I'm going over, I could see anyone win each one of them because that's how close and that's how competitive that I think that they will be on this card. But the main event, the one we've all been waiting for, it's Alex Pereira the reigning, defending, undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion Poatan is taking on Yuri Prohashka, the former light heavyweight champion, for the second time since November. We know how that one played out. Yuri won the first round on all three judges' scorecards, had him on the ground, had some control time in the first round. Then the second round, Yuri was still having some success, and Alec, he got too close and entered Alex's space and it allowed him to show why he's one of the best strikers in the UFC, one of the best counter strikers in the sport. When you get close, that just allows, and you open up and you let your guard down for half a second, that allows Alex Pereira to make his magic. And he finished Yuri. I still believe that it was an early stoppage. He hit him with some ground and pound when he had him down. I still think Yuri was fighting back, even though that in the end we can infer what was likely to happen. Alex was winning that fight at that point, that moment. But since then, Alex finished Jamal Hill at UFC 300. Yuri finished another top 205er in Alexander Rakic at UFC 300. Two guys coming off of great wins. We've seen this matchup before. Just two guys that display the warrior spirit, and just two guys that everybody loves, two fan favorites, two just unbelievable fighters. There's no bad blood, it doesn't seem like, in this fight. They're just two guys that want to go in there and prove, and we'll find out who is the best. Yuri says and thinks that he doesn't need to change a lot from last time. We'll see if that's true. And Alex, there's still a lot on the line from him. I give him a ton of respect. He was on a media tour back in Australia, and he took this fight. We know he suffered multiple broken toes after his last fight. Still a little bit recovering from that. But all in all, this, even though it's a fight on short notice, out of any matchup the UFC could have given us, these are the two guys that have the highest percentage of delivering on short notice, because they're that exciting of fighters, and they really just have that. They really just have, like I said, that warrior mindset and mentality, and just always want to fight. It doesn't matter if it's on a week or 2 weeks or 2 months. They'll fight whenever. They'll fight anybody. This is really as close to call of a main event and a championship fight that I can remember. These are two of the elite fighters and biggest superstars right now in the sport going toe to toe. And it's really just crazy when you look at this, because like I said, this is only Alex's 9th fight in the UFC, 9th in the past 2.5 years, and it's only going to be his 13th total fight in MMA. It's really just incredible. 13th fight in MMA, 9th fight in the UFC, and this is his 5th title fight out of 9 in the UFC. The run that this guy has been on, I can't say enough great things. He's been everything you want in a superstar, and it's just crazy because he doesn't speak English, and he still has found a way to get over with his shama and you know, his crazy walkout when he does the bow and arrow. He just knows how to get the fans involved in that face off. I just keep going back to that first fight when it started. Was just one of the craziest face offs I ever can remember. Two guys that were locked in from the start. This is going to be an incredible fight. I can't wait for this. My prediction, I think Yuri Prohashka is going to finish Alex Pereira in the 3rd round, but Yuri needs to check the calf kicks that we saw Alex hit him with in the first fight, in the first round. But I think if Yuri can get it past the 2nd round, I think he has a great chance. Yuri just has one of the best chins, and it takes so much to put him out, as we've seen in the past. But I really think his defense needs to be a little better. He can't, when he gets close and he throws, he needs to make sure he has his guard up, or we know what Alex can do. I'm not counting Alex out by any stream of the imagination. He is one of the greatest fighters, not just right now, but Alex is one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen in just 9 fights. in the UFC, it's really just unbelievable. This is really as close to a pick 'em, a toss up fight as we can get. But overall, thanks everybody for watching. This UFC 303 pay per view should be incredible. I can't wait to watch it. It goes down Saturday, June 29th at 10 p.m. Eastern.